There we go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, you can just go ahead.
I don't know, for the last year or so, I have been talking about art as reparations. So I decided to kind of put my practice in this context for you. By the way, I live right at the train. The train goes by my window. So if you hear a train, it's a train. At any rate, and so what I like to talk about first is what informs my practice. So hi, I'm Vinnie Bagwell. I'm an African-American woman from New York. And let's see if I can make this go. Hold on one second. Down. Okay, so first of all, of course, let's talk about what reparations means. It's making amends for a wrong that has been done by paying money or otherwise help someone who has been wrong. So let's talk about the wrongs. Of course, we all know that, millions of Africans were enslaved for 500 years, not 500 years in America. And of course, children lost their mothers and fathers, and parents lost each other, and slavery became an economic engine in the South. That's where it began. However, slavery was conducted in all 13 states. And let's just talk about New York, where I'm from. Most people think that New York is where people ran to for, salvation and freedom. And New York was financing slavery, insuring the boats. It was an economic development adventure. So of course, lately we've been talking about the Tulsa massacre, again, that was listed in Lovecraft Country. I mean, they actually made a movie about it. And so people becoming aware of that particular story. But then when you look at the Black massacres all over the country, there were a gajillion of them in just about every region. And so, for instance, something I learned recently in Georgia, there's a place called Oscarville where they actually buried a whole Black town underwater. They released the dam and buried these people. And so now there's a movie coming out about how Lake Lanier sits on top of a city that was originally a Black city. Of course, we have lynchings, more than 5,000 people were killed. Of course, there's a new Emmett Till movie coming, and so all these things are related to Black history. Of course, there's a large history of attacks on Black churches, not just the children that were killed in the church in Alabama, but you've got segregation, you've got Jim Crow laws. Again, Black celebrities such as Ella were not exempt from racism. And then of course, there are a lot of people who were advocates. Of course, you have Eleanor Roosevelt, you have a bunch of folks that tried to help during the times when we were trying to overcome racial prejudice. Of course, Billie Holiday sang Strange Root, typo. And of course, you had assassinations, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. I grew up in this era. I was born in 1957. So as a child, this is the kind of stuff I used to see on TV, okay? My parents talked about this. And again, we are still living a lot of, not in the same way, but it's still happening, police brutality. So of course, we're talking about the number of African Americans killed. When I saw this number, 28,000 African Americans have been killed by the police since 2000, your jaw drops. And so of course, we talk about disparities in imprisoned people. All these things matter. And this is why we've come to the concept that Black lives matter. So my job, and again, it's been my job since the very beginning, is elevating the culture of marginalized people. Before I was a sculptor, I was a graphic designer, I was a writer, I was a public relations specialist. And in each of these jobs I had, I made an effort to try to do my part to help people whom I thought were marginalized. And so now I'm a storyteller, steward of this nation's memory. This, by the way, is August Wilson's play, The Piano Lesson. Ruben Santiago Hudson, who is a renowned artist and actor and director, came to me and asked me to make the artwork for this piano. And he shopped around and he said I was on everybody's list. So he came to me first. And I was like, I know what you want. And so of course, I made the artwork for the piano. That particular play, which took place in 2012, had 3 extensions, which was phenomenal. And it was interesting because one day, in the beginning of preview, we used to have these intermissions where we'd stand and meet the people. And, one day he turns to me and he says, how come your line is always longer than mine? And I was surprised that he was like clocking me. And I said, well, you're famous and I'm well loved. At any rate, my goal is to design truly memorable places. This is the Enslaved Africans Rain Garden illustration. I work with Brown Craig Turner, BCT Designs out of Baltimore. We're damn near married. These people, I call them my reading glasses because I put them on, they see my vision further. And so we've been winning. This is the original design for the Enslaved Africans Rain Garden, which I swear to God is coming this spring. Westchester County is funding, and I can't tell you what it's like when you're trying to do business and get through bureaucratic red tape with a county and a municipality, but it's happening. And again, this is where inspiration, innovation converge. My artwork in public places changes the perception of place. This is the overview design for Victory. If you're familiar, excuse me one second. Victory is a commission that I won in 2019. I am still duking it out with the city of New York. I'm not even going to tell you what's going on with them, but it should be unnecessary, but it's happening. It is not an easy city to work with. I'm just going to say it like that. So hopefully we'll resolve it sometime this year because it's been too long and the community really deserves better. Hell, they took 10 years to kind of get that sculpture taken down. If you're not familiar, J. Marion Sims is the father of gynecology. Ladies, you know, when you go get the OBGYN inspection and they put that speculum up your vajayjay, that guy. At any rate, the community fought to get that sculpture removed, and they love this design, but you know, the city is just not really easy to navigate. So, dramatic inciting waves. This brought me a standing ovation. Even when I saw it, when the architect sent it to me, I just started screaming and running in place because I think it's dynamic. And again, you know, I want to create things that people haven't seen before. Again, these are stories that are being told oftentimes for the first time in public art, and it's important to me to represent these stories well. And so the idea is to honor the contributions of enslaved African women's sacrifice. This is Victory. This is my standard style now. You've got a figure and there's bas-relief narrative all around the bottom of her skirt. And basically it's talking about the 12 women who this man experimented on in the name of science. The killer is that he experimented on them with no painkiller, no anesthesia. And when he perfected his experiments, he took them to Europe and performed them on white women with anesthesia, with painkiller. That's not acceptable to the people of Harlem, East Harlem, and rightly so. And so we're now talking about racial democracy to replace offensive public artworks. This discussion, as you guys may very well know, has been going on since, oh, I don't know, it's been going on at least for 5 to 7 years. I mean, I was on a group discussion with the Americans for the Arts. I think that was 2015, 16, something like that. And again, the question is, how do you get more women and people of color in the arena? Well, if you guys know anything about public art, that's gonna be really hard because the public art arena has been dominated by, well, they call it white patriarch, white men for the last 5,000 years. If you want to talk about representational figurative artwork in this country, there are about maybe 5,600 some odd works. You think it'd be more, but that's all there is. And less than 5% of them have been created by women, and less than that have been created by people of color about people of color. So I'm kind of an anomaly. It is one of those things where I was lucky. I mean, when I first started creating sculpture, my foundry gave me the entree into public art. The first commission, Ella Fitzgerald, was not fully funded, and the foundry gave it to me as a gift. That doesn't happen. So the idea is to tell the truth. History is telling the truth about history is reparations. Sojourner Truth, she went up in Walkway Over the Hudson last year, 2020. Well, no, year before last now, 2020. Again, it was important to Governor Cuomo to stay on task, on time in the middle of a pandemic because he thought that it was important to acknowledge what has been done to African Americans. It's a form of reparations. So on day 2 of pandemic, mind you, New York was leading, despite everything that happened afterwards, New York was leading the pandemic in terms of information. So on day 2, Cuomo's office called me and asked me, do you want to work? I'm like, yes, I do. And so he made me an essential business, which meant that everybody in my realm who works with me, for me, whatever, was able to come out of seclusion and work, because at that point we had gotten totally buckled down. Nobody was allowed to go anywhere. And so, we thought it was phenomenal that public art should be so important. They were allowing us to work. By the way, that is Sojourner Truth's 5th generation grandson. Her whole family is full of artists, okay? Nothing but painters. They're really good, and so this is Corey. Corey called me up on a Wednesday talking about, I want to come over. I'm like, okay, where are you coming from? Grand Rapids, Michigan. Okay, so when do you want to come? He's like, Saturday. I was like, oh, you got tickets already? He's like, no, I'm getting ready to buy tickets. Like, you don't want to wait? No. And so it was phenomenal to have her family just seriously roll out the woodwork. I mean, en masse. And another irony is that most people don't know that Sojourner Truth's family is married into Malcolm X's family. You may recall Malcolm X's real name is Little. The Littles live in Grand Rapids, Michigan. They too came out the woodwork. By the way, I promised to have a party. So I had a party, because I believe in civic engagement. I had a party to, introduce the sculptor before I sent to the foundry. And the day after, I get a phone call from Harriet Tubman's niece. She's mad because she didn't get an invitation to the party. I'm like, excuse me, do I know you? And she's like, well, no. I'm like, do you know somebody that I know? She's like, I don't know. I'm like, so how would I know to invite you to the party if I don't even know you exist? At any rate, guess who I'm doing now? New York State is just gave me a commission to do Harriet Tubman for Niagara Falls. Stay tuned on that. But, you don't think of the icons as having living relatives like living around in your neighborhood. You just don't think of that. So, I said to him, you have got to be visible because you're like American history icon royalty. So I got tremendous charge photobombing, I was doing an artist talk the next day. So he wanted to stay. I'm like, stay. So I rolled up at the Hudson River Museum with him and said, guess who's here? And of course, pandemonium broke out. At any rate, it's nice to have that kind of experience. So I elevate the culture of marginalized people. This is Legacy. She is at Chickasaw Heritage Park in Memphis. She represents, African Americans, Hispanic Americans, and Native Americans. That was a relatively low budget. So this is how I came to be starting to do bas-relief on the actual figures, because with that budget, it was hard to do 3 ethnicities well. You had enough money to do one person. It's like, how do I tell this story? And so this is kind of how I came at it. There's relief sculpture that goes all the way around the back of that artwork. And so Art for Public Places balances the American narrative. This is Frederick Douglass at Hofstra University. In his hand, he's holding a speech that basically says, until the American people stop using color as the bar and measure for respectability, this discussion must go on. And if you know Frederick Douglass, he goes on a rant. All the way around this piece is a good section of that speech, because again, because it's at a university, I felt that this piece should be instructional. And of course, what's really cool about him is that when I go to the beach, Jones Beach, he's on the way. So I usually stop to see him at least once a year. And almost every time I go, there's a can of beer in his hand, which says to me that at least the students are engaging him. They want him to be refreshed. And so, they always apologize. No, that's good. That means that they're engaging him. They're not just walking by, ignoring him. So Fred is well cared for. I don't know if you know Hofstra, but Hofstra is a certified arboretum. They have a tulip garden that features 163 different kinds of tulips, which I think is phenomenal. At any rate, I create eye-consuming destinations about the critical roles enslaved Africans played in American history. This is Frederick Douglass, the maquette. And my style is defined by candid portraiture. This is Timber the Boatman. He is one of 5 sculptures for the enslaved Africans rain garden, which will be installed this spring coming. And I use bas-relief techniques in non-traditional ways. This is a traditional technique. I am surprised that more people don't use it. Some people swear it's really hard. Lucky for me, I don't find it difficult. It's basically math. It's, background, middle ground, foreground, what's supposed to be higher or lower, whatever the case may be. I can draw, as you can see, and all I'm doing is drawing and then bumping it out and, chiseling it back and making, again, these narrative stories. They help me to extend the narrative, so that when you look at them, it doesn't matter whether you're American or whether you speak English or if you know what the story is. If you're a human being, you kind of get it. And so one of the phenomenal things that happened to me early on, mostly in 2009, is when I finally joined Facebook, because I was the last person to get on Facebook, I think. People started wanting to talk to me about the artwork. And imagine you get an email and it's not only is it not in English, it's not in the American alphabet. You're like, what is that? And this is before we had translators in Facebook. So you'd have to copy, cut, paste in the translator, see what they said. Okay, now I know what they said. Make up an answer, copy, cut, paste, put in the translator. People want to talk to me for a half an hour. And one of the things that I discovered early on, you're annoying. I'm not picking you up again. You figure it out. Go lay down somewhere. Excuse me. One of the things that I figured out early on was that it doesn't matter to people outside the country color. That doesn't matter to them. They want to know the story. They understand the basics of the story. Only here would somebody look at this and say, oh, you're a Black artist, or oh, you make Black art. No, in the world, I make art about Black culture. It's a little different inference. So my narratives extend the story to inform the viewer. This is the front of the piano. Again, one of the things that Ruben Santiago Hudson wanted was for his actors to be able to look at the piano and not have to imagine their lines, that their lines would come to them because they would see the story in the image. So if you're not familiar with the piano lesson or with August Wilson, he's of course one of the greatest Black playwrights. He wrote 10 plays for the 20th century. The piano lesson is a story of a slaveholder who decided that he was going to sell this woman her child so he could buy his wife a piano. And when he did, she found out who he sold and she had a temper tantrum, like, go get them. And he was like, too late, I got you a piano, you better play that. And of course, she was mad for quite some time. So the man went to the woman's husband, who he heard was a wood carver, and asked him to put their picture on the front of the piano, and he decided to tell his whole family history all over the piano. And of course, the man was like, I didn't ask you for all that, but she's happy, I'm good. Well, when the wife died, the piano disappeared, and the question, who would steal the piano? So it turns out that they, have the sheriff put together a posse, and they figure out that it's this guy, and this guy's trying to get away on a freight train. They set the freight train on fire and kill all the people on the freight train. Fast forward to, I don't know, the 30s, and there's the piano in a very nice living room. The question is how to get there, and whose house is this? Turns out that it's his grandchildren or children. And the whole story is about why the brother shouldn't sell the piano, because the sister is trying to explain to him that this is our family legacy. This is all we have. We don't have photographs. This is not 2022. This is, 1930s, we had cell phones and cameras. Everybody didn't have cameras back then. And so the point of it is that they talk about the value of legacy. And so, hi, there's the piano. That's the side of piano. And again, it creates visual intrigue. For me, my goal, first of all, is to snatch your eye. I'm gonna make you look. The question is, how long can I hold your eye? And I learned that in my childhood. My father, whom I did not realize was an artist since I was in my 40s, my mother is too. My father, when he would come home from work, particularly during the summertime, I'd be drawing or whatever, he'd come see what I was doing. And I would make him a little stack. These are my best pieces I want to show him. And I'd be like, you want to see what I made? And he was like, yeah. And so I would show him and he would never say anything. Even now, when I do my public artworks, when I invite him over, like, Dad, look, what do you think? He won't say anything. He just kind of looks, and I have to watch his face and see what his eyes are registering. And then he'll go, mm-hmm. And that's all I get. At any rate, my subjects have souls who speak to the viewer. And I don't know if you guys peruse my Facebook page. It's wide open. I have 2 of them. Both of them are almost pretty much at 5,000. I think one is 4,999, the other one's 495 something or other. But the point of it is that people from all over the world respond all the time. I mean, like they know me. to the artwork because the artwork speaks to them. This is chain gang. And so they're meant to be engaging. People send me pictures all the time. This is a gentleman who sent me a picture. He sent me a bunch of pictures, but this is the one that is the most powerful to me because again, he's compelled not only to touch it, you're gonna make a photograph of him touching it. That means something to me. It's the fact that people want to touch it. People want to know what does it mean. They want to ask questions. So lately I've been adding outdoor museum signage, so you don't have to guess. So in 2009, I created an initiative to celebrate enslaved Africans. These are the 5 maquettes. We had a very nice exhibition that lasted for a month. And I used to go every day and stay at least 4 hours a day just to watch how people engage it. And I was really, really fascinated by the fact that white people used to come and cry all the time, every day. Somebody's would break out crying. I mean, like, let me get you some tissues here. You know, and so, you know, I wanted to hear what white people thought because I care. And so the consensus was, oh my God, they're so beautiful. That's part one. And I'm like, yeah, I'm slaying with beauty. That's pretty much how I go at it. But they were intrigued by the story, by the sensitivity of the artwork. And again, they made me understand why my artwork works. I mean, I make it because I like it, because I think it's a good approach, but it's always good to hear people respond. And this is why I'm an advocate for civic engagement. I've been that way ever since. As a matter of fact, when I went to therapy eons ago, my therapist wanted to know why you got to ask everybody like a survey, like ask everybody the same questions, because I want to make sure I'm well-centered. I want to make sure that I'm not insane. So the idea is to emphasize the importance of preserving local history. This is the Phillips Manor Hall, which actually lives like a block down from this. And this manor is almost 400 years old. And again, most people don't realize that Frederick Phillips, who built this house, was the largest slave trader in the country, second to the people in South Carolina. You know, again, people have a misunderstanding of what the North was about. And so again, I made 5 sculptures, you know, and I named them. This is Isati, this is Bibi. And again, the idea of naming them is to humanize the memory of enslaved Africans, because you know, before Black Lives Matter, when I talked about doing slavery, people were like, oh God, we gotta talk about the slaves again. It's like, yes, we do, yes, because we're not trying to do that again. Thank you very much. At any rate, the goal is to make people understand that slavery existed in the North. And at this time, we're talking about, well, 1685 on. This is early American slavery, when the Europeans didn't even want to come here yet, because they hadn't even cleared the roads. These are the people who brought over and cleared the roads. Now, the irony is that in that time, America was Black. For every 5 people, 4 of them were Black, okay? This is before the Europeans came. And again, what a lot of people don't realize is that it was mostly young people. I'm talking about 20 and under. These were really young people. And so I brought in a spoken word artist. Ty Grael is a poet laureate for DC. And I asked him to give them a voice. It's like, okay, let me tell you what each of these sculptures means to me and what I think their story is, and then I want you to expand. So he created these 10-minute stories. If you haven't checked them out, go to my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is pretty organized. You just kind of scroll down and look for the Enslaved Africans Rain Garden, and you will find 5 stories about each of these people. When I do my civic engagement activities with the kids, when I start the story, because it's 10 minutes long, I don't have that much time, they freak out, like, wait, we want to know what happened. It's like, you got to go to YouTube, we don't have that much time right now. And so I have in-studio workshops for students to explore civility and tolerance. I lived in Columbia, Maryland for 10 years. Columbia, if you're not familiar, is a planned city. It's a very young city. It's only about now, maybe about 50, 55 years old. And originally it was designed for civility's sake. It was designed for interracial couples to be able to go someplace and not have to worry about people and their prejudice. When I moved there, it was still relatively new, and I couldn't figure out why so many white women had brown babies in the supermarket. And then I learned about the history of the place. But the point of it is, if you Google civility in Columbia, Maryland, they have a whole curriculum from K through 12 about how to be civilized, how you teach your children to be civilized. I don't know why the president doesn't make it a national incentive, because it's simple. When I moved there, my daughter was in 3rd grade. In 3rd grade, they were teaching them how to respect elders. So every week, every Friday, the third grade would go, because everything is walkable. The third graders would go to the nursing home and read to the seniors. And the seniors, of course, would tell them stories, and they had this exchange. And it was the whole idea that old people are just like you. They've just been here a lot longer. And when you talk to them, you realize that most of them are really, really cool. And so I really appreciated, because every year I was curious to know, what are we learning this year? I really appreciated their approach to teaching kids how to be good citizens. So these are fifth graders from the Hawthorne Pearl School here in Yonkers. It is a school for the gifted. These kids are really smart, and they walk in with the phones up and they have really good questions. I do not teach, but we do talk about the voices in our heads, and we talk about intuition and how intuition works. And that, of course, freaks them out, because usually it's not a conversation they've ever had before. And I'm like, come on, let's name the voices in our heads. And they're just like, we're going to talk about that? I'm like, yeah, right now. And so we have fun with it, and they have to drag them out of here. It's like, well, wait, the next group coming in, we'll have to come back, but I mean, there's lots of squealing and carrying on because we have fun with it. At any rate, I also, talk to the local college students. This is Sarah Lawrence College. And again, the idea is to talk about racial equity. What the heck does that mean? And so we have conversations about the idea of, again, balancing the narrative through public art. And then, of course, civic engagement. I used to give really amazing parties in my studio. I mean, on the regular, whenever a sculpture was completed, I'd invite like 200-300 people. And, over the course of 3 or 4 hours, because I believe in food, people would just come in and be drinking wine and eating food and talking. And, it was always a fun thing because, well, nobody else around here does this sort of partying. And so we kind of miss it now, but we're going to try to do something this summer, perhaps outside, when we have the unveiling for the Rain Garden project. But this was a regular thing that I did for really 10 years, just to talk about art in a public place. This is how I won the inaugural prize from Americans for the Arts, because my whole thing is public art. Well, put the public in public art, bring them into the process. That's what I do. At any rate, so, again, the idea is to, bring people into the process. I live in an old trolley barn. This building was vacant for 40 years. And when I finally heard that they were, renovating it to create, live workspace, I'm like, I'm living in there. And again, a lot of people don't even know what this building is. So oftentimes, when they come into my studio, this is their first time coming into this building. And it's stunning because it's got 18-foot ceilings, spiral staircase, it's wide open. And then there's like life-size, sometimes larger than life-size sculptures in the middle of the floor. And people just like, whoa, and then they realize, I don't know any sculptors. I don't know anybody who does public art. And so, of course, it creates, well, lots of conversation and goodwill. By the way, this is the Enslaved Africans Rain Garden design. It is going to be on an acre of land. That pathway that runs through it is actually a river. It's a faux river that runs through it. There are 5 sculptures. It is very lush. At some point, City of Yonkers made the mistake of saying it was too fancy, and I had a temper tantrum like, there's nothing too fancy for the slaves. You kidding me? At any rate, I've got all kinds of flowering trees and all kinds of beautiful just landscaping. There's a section over by the children where there's, flowers that are designed specifically because they draw butterflies and whatever. And the idea was to make it a sanctuary. By the way, at the bottom where you see a little curvy thing, just past that is the Hudson River. So you have a magnificent view because it sits literally on the Hudson River. Can't wait to make it. At any rate, this again is another site plan illustration. My architect, luckily, is a friend of a friend. And, when I first went to him, I'll never forget, he had his very posh architectural firm, down on the Inner Harbor in Baltimore. And I'm sitting in a room with 6 senior architects, and they wanted to know, so what's the budget for this? This is at the very beginning. And I was like, oh, there's no budget. My currency is how much you like me. And Bryce Turner was like, I like her a lot. And so long and short, we've been working together for like the last 15 years. And these guys don't normally do public art. They build cities in China and Dubai and Siberia. I mean, I'm talking about something like several square miles, $430 million projects. I am a pet to them, but again, they're artists and, they find this work intriguing. And I only go to them when I have a decent budget, because frankly, otherwise I can't afford them. So, when I do have a good budget, they make me squeal because their work is just stellar. So hi, I'm an essential business reflecting New York's commitment to public art, the sacred place of my ancestors. So in upstate New York, by the way, Yonkers is not upstate. People who live in, I'll just say Brooklyn, Manhattan, call Yonkers upstate. It's like, no, come on. About the Bronx. Albany is upstate. This is Montgomery, New York. Montgomery, New York is an hour and 15 minutes north of me. To the right of this, you'll see like a road, that's 416. You see that gray area that's kind of a U-ey? That's a tractor trailer truck stop. So if you pull your 18-wheeler up in there, and let's say you're a man who's got to pee, when you step out, you're pretty much stepping into an African burial ground. 86 young people, really young people, buried in the woods. And the question is, we're still trying to figure out. I got 6 historians that came out the woodwork that were more than happy to research this for me for free as an in-kind service. And now I've got a Google Drive with a boatload of just raw information that at some point I'm going to sit down and read through and try to figure out how to tell this story in a really nice, easy, like 8th grade level way so that anybody can understand what this place is. But anyway, the town supervisor decided that he wanted to rehabilitate it. And so lucky for me, the woman who does their emergency, like when you call 911 and say you want to hurt yourself, she's the person you get on the phone. She's somebody that I mentored like 20 years ago. And she said, I know who should do this for you. So they called me in. And so I'm like, yeah, okay, well, I tell you what, first of all, I want to know where they are. I'm not doing anything until I find out who's in the ground, exactly where are they, what are they? So I went to the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture. I knew that they had the equipment to do ground penetrating radar surveys. And so I called them up and I said, hi, let me tell you what I want. And by the way, I'm going to need it as an in-kind service. I don't have no money. And I told them, and within 5 minutes, they were like, we'd be honored. And so they did. They came and did a ground penetrating survey, a GIS, a GPS. And of course, when you look at this, you're like, so what is that? I mean, it was funny because she sent the report and we were all like, we don't know what this means. Of course, I was very lucky. I am extremely lucky. Down the hall, 2 doors down, is my neighbor who is a who's who archaeologist for the Western Hemisphere. That would be this whole side of the planet. So I went to him and I was like, so are you busy? Would you mind working with me on something? I want to show you what I'm doing. And he's like, oh my God, because again, he's worked on all the major digs and he's like, I would love to. So when he got this, he's like, oh, I'll tell you what this is. So we were all just wrapped listening to him explain what it meant. The wild thing is that some of these people are as close as 18 inches from the surface, which is problematic because if you let people keep walking on it, sooner or later, you're gonna be walking on them literally, and we didn't wanna have that happen. So the goal was to design something that kept people from passively not walking on the burial ground. So this is what we came up with. Again, first of all, we're like, let's make a real parking lot. Across the street is Medline, which is a major pharmaceutical company. Part of the problem is that they didn't really tell the people what they intended to build. And then they built this giant, seriously, gray box that obliterates a vista view. And of course, the whole town had a temper tantrum about it. So in order to make what? Reparations, they put up a giant chunk of change and said, well, maybe we could do something to rehabilitate the, across the street and make it nice, So I'm like, okay, works for me. And so lo and behold, we added landscaping on their side of the street. We added landscaping on our side of the street, a real parking lot that is ADA compliant. Of course, I have been funded a lot by HUD, and I kind of know HUD like the back of my hand. And I called up HUD to say, so, what's your feeling about this demographic? Because, Yonkers has a very high poverty rate, which is 12%. And of course, this is the country. Their poverty rate is much lower. So they only pay for ADA compliant things. I was like, well, that's good because half the stuff I'm doing is ADA compliant. So they're paying for the parking lot and that walkway, which is like a boardwalk, it's raised. And also too, it's non-invasive. So, it's one of those things that's constructed off site and then you just kind of install it. And when you see all these little dots, I don't know if you can see like here, can you see my little thing there? Here, 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 here. Those are all stops where you can read about this place. And so again, funding will bring dignity to the memory of enslaved Africans. By the way, the National Endowment for the Arts just gave me a nice little grant to start the first sculpture, so I'm not mad. All right, so I'm saying, let's tell the truth, and hey, I'm here to tell it. So that's what's going on with that. And at this point, I'm just applying for a bunch of things. I just applied for a $4 million project for Dayton College. They have seriously announced that they know that they have been complicit to slavery, and they feel like they want to put their money where their mouth is. Pray I win that. I would like to do that. Oh man, I have not seen a budget like that for slavery yet. So I'm excited about that. There's a bunch of things coming down the pike. You know, I'm a finalist for James Lawson. If you're not familiar with James Lawson, he was the architect for the civil rights movement. You know, you all know, of course, Martin Luther King and all the crew that went with that, but this is the guy who was telling Martin Luther King what to do. So my final is due for that on Friday. And so at this point, I'm just throwing a lot of stuff on the wall, trying to see what sticks, because hi, I'm 64. I don't intend to work this hard 10 years from now. And so I just really am committed to making a difference. Well, while I have my health. Thank you. Questions? And normally I don't talk that fast, but it was a lot of information. So just blah, 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 blah. Okay, how do I get out? I'm trying to figure out how to escape.
That was so great. Thank you so much. I like you just peppered us with all the information. So I feel like I saw Scott lean in. I think Scott probably has some questions. I think maybe Catherine she looked like maybe she did. So you guys just, you know, unmute and ask. We've got about 15 minutes or so for questions.
Hey, Vinnie, so even the last project you talked about, are you the driving force behind that idea?
I am.
You heard about this and then decide, okay, we need to design a site and go after the funding?
I left out my other, I am an old car salesperson. I sold cars for 10 years. I'm not just a salesperson, I'm a closer. You know, if I see an opportunity and I think it's going to work for me, my goal is to close. So when they brought me up, I'm like, this is mine, I'm doing this. And so immediately, you know, the question is, you all really want to do this? Because if you make me mine, I will work this for you. I'm also a grant writer. And, you know, the Enslaved Africans Rain Garden was a project that I developed. So this is my second project. When I did the Enslaved Africans Rain Garden, I created a nonprofit 501c3. And, you know, part of my mission is to do this kind of work. So of course, having a 501c3 makes me eligible for all kinds of funding. So I apply as that entity. And then of course, I'm actually the artist who's doing the work.
I know artists who are intrigued at the idea of writing grants and that whole deal.
Okay, can I stop you there?
I'd love to know your perspective.
One of the things that I didn't talk about, because I had a lot to talk about, like a half hour goes by so fast. I had mentors from 8th grade on. In 8th grade, I went to Woodlands High School, you know, in Hartsdale, New York, here in Westchester. And when I got to 8th grade, of course, I was already an overachiever. And the English chair came to me and assigned herself as my mentor. And she challenged me to take 2 Englishes every semester. She also put me in AP English. So here in New York, we have something called a Regents Diploma, which is a advanced placement diploma. So I took AP English every semester, and then I took expository writing, critical writing. Oh my God, I had a bunch of English classes. I took 2 Englishes. So by the time I got to high school, I was a writing athlete already, which made college really easy. And then much later, when I became a graphic designer, and there I am trying to, you know, sell somebody onto the idea of doing a newsletter, most people don't have writers on staff. So I'm like, that's okay, I'll do it. And so as time went on, you know, I learned about grants and whatnot. I'm trying to figure out how to live as an artist. And so I started writing grants. And basically, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Richard Haas, but Richard Haas is a Trompe l'oeil muralist, very famous, happens to be a friend of mine. And this man, when I knew him originally, had already won 125 commissions actually worldwide. And his wife was writing his grants. And I asked her, Catherine, how do you win these things? And she says, very simple, follow the instructions.
Yeah, sometimes it feels like when I read grant, like RFPs even, they put difficulty in the path to see how closely you're paying attention to what they're asking for.
Follow the instructions. If you have questions, then you need to ask a question, but follow the instructions. And when you get ready to submit, it's like doing math. I don't know about you, but when I learned how to do adding and subtraction, I remember being in, like, I don't know, second grade. It's like, okay, adding first, and then they taught you subtraction. They taught you how to test adding by subtracting. It's the same thing. When you're doing a grant, when you finish doing everything, you go back over what they ask you, and the question is, did I answer that question or not?
I have a question. Can you all hear me?
Hi.
Hi, this is Kathy Mitchell. Have you ever had to insure your work?
My work remains insured. For a long time, I did not, but now I carry liability insurance all the time. It costs me about $1,000 a year. It's worth it. So that means anytime I exhibit, anytime I ship, anytime somebody comes to my house and breaks something, I've got wall-to-wall coverage. $1,000 is called peace of mind.
Yeah, Catherine, I also carry insurance. I just sometimes wake up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night thinking about a lifting strap breaking when we're installing a bronze and it falling on a child or cutting off the toe of somebody who's standing close by, and all the complications. Yeah. All of a sudden, an insurance premium is nothing. Yeah. compared to the brain damage.
$2 million minimum is what I recommend. $2 million. Yeah. Pretty much covers you wall to wall. If anything happens to you, you've got workman's compensation. If something else happens to somebody else, it's like, well, I got you $2 million. I mean, you know, and again, it's so you can sleep at night.
Absolutely.
So we had a question typed into the chat. Jennifer asked, what are the key ingredients in getting the community buy-in the way you did so successfully for the Victory Beyond SIMS project?
I think it's important to, first of all, it's really important to engage the community. The question is, how do you want to do that? Like, for instance, if you go to, and my Facebook page is open, you'll notice that on Twitter and Instagram, it's like I died or something, because I don't remember to go on there. I don't. I do enough with 2 pages on Facebook. If you go into Facebook, I don't post every day, but I post definitely a couple of times a week. And people respond to me and I respond back. It is not uncommon for somebody to ask me a question. I'll go into message, I'll call you. Girl, what you doing over there? You know, and so people kind of like the fact that I am engaging and reachable. They swear up and down I'm one of the humblest people they've ever met. I'm like, I'm not sure about that, but you know, I want to talk to people. I want to know what they care about. That informs me which way to go. And every community is different. Like, for instance, if I were to come to Oklahoma, I would not take my experience from Boise and think I know you, you know? And so the idea is to find out, what do people value? You know, if you're making art for public places, the question is, why should we care? When the city of New York picked somebody that they were specific that they didn't want, and they rioted for more than an hour, one of the things they said is, you can put that up there if you want to, but if you do, we will destroy it. We will destroy it. Put it up there again, we will destroy it. It's like, that is not something a public artist wants to hear. That is not something any of us want to hear. It's one of the reasons why the artist they selected, you know, said, excuse me, if they want Miss Bagwell, let them have Miss Bagwell, because she has a reputation with them already, and she respects them enough to step back. Of course, she's made $1 million again since then. But the point of it is that it's important to listen to the community that the artwork is going to serve. If the commissioning body doesn't set something up, then go there yourself. You know, find out who the movers and shakers are. When I did Doc Hurley for Hartford, that funding came from the state. Soon as they got the money, I was like, I need to go up there. 2-hour drive. I called up, turned out I have a cousin that lives, he's my father's contemporary, he's in his 80s, but he's lived in Hartford for the better part of his adult life. I'm like, do you know who the movers and shakers here are? He said, no. I said, can you get them together to me for lunch, like at a restaurant or something? And I met with 12 people the first time in a restaurant, and we just sat there and talked about why it was important that they were getting this sculpture. Doc Hurley is an everyday man. He's not famous. He's an everyday man that was an educator. He wasn't allowed to teach basketball because of racism. So he decided to have basketball clinics at the Boys and Girls Club. And then when he realized that most of the kids that he was creating, this program for, most of them are poor, he started raising money for college. This man sent 500 some odd kids to college. You go to Hartford and mention him, everybody got a story about this man. The point of it is, it was important for me to understand what that artwork meant to them. And they're very insular up there. Oh, but I couldn't get them to come out worth a darn. But when they had a dedication, the entire city came out, and I'm sitting in the crowd, and I'm just listening, and I could hear people saying, this is so nice. We've never had anything like this. I'm just listening to the people around me, and I'm sitting there like, I already know what this means to you. I already know. And again, I did best practice because I know what best practice looks like. Me and the senator banged heads so badly that for the last 6 months, he couldn't even speak to me. I'm like, I don't care. I'm doing the right thing. I don't need you to like me. I don't need you to get along with me. I need you to move over there and let me do my job. And again, I'm a little balky because I will guard my projects like, oh, you want to fight with me? Come on, bring it. Point of it is that I'm here to represent, and I don't let people get in the way of me doing the right thing. At the back end, there we are at dedication. I'm supposed to be going to the right. I go to the left. I'm like, come on, give me a hug. Give me a hug. Come on. I heard somebody say, oh, they're making up. It's like, yeah, because you know what? We're finished now. You're a hero. I'm a hero. It's done. The people are happy. That was the bottom line. And, he's sitting there with tears in his eyes. And I just kind of pet him. I said, it's all right. I'm not mad with you. And you shouldn't be mad with me because we did the right thing. Look at the people.
I love that you refer to yourself as a storyteller, and your command of language is obvious in some of the phrases you just gave us. I wrote some down, which I went, okay, that is so good. I've got to retain this. Where inspiration and innovation merge. Love that idea. Artwork changes the perception of place. Telling truth is reparations.
It is.
Create visual intrigue. How long can I hold your eyes? Are you kidding? I almost came out of my chair when you said that. I went, that's what I've been trying to say for 30 years, and I've never been able to put it in one sentence. And you just did that for me. The day-to-day struggle to be human, the sacred place of my ancestors. Boy, there's just this huge story that you're telling about the dignity and the nobility of public art to represent our culture well and to inspire those who come after us. I can't help but think about the people who will stand in front of sculpture when we're gone, when we're no longer there to explain. It has to explain itself. Man, you've just done such an awesome job here of telling a story.
Here's the thing. I struggled. I mean, I'm good now, but I struggled. I mean, for like more than a decade. I mean, I've been homeless. I've been through the fire. Okay. And through that part, one of the things I can say to you is that, number one, I believe in God, not because I went to church every day until I was 13, because frankly, I was editing the Reverend's sermons, like he said that 2 Sundays ago. But no, I know that there's a God, because I know, like most people, that this is not me. This is something coming through me. And it's funny because years ago, my daughter's an artist too, a really good one. It's funny when your kids have your gift. My daughter says to me, I know she's about 8 years old, how come when the actors get awards, they say, I would like to thank God, Jesus Christ, my savior? I'm like, Pierre, please. I said, because most really good artists know it's not them. They know that the gift, keyword gift, comes from somebody somewhere. And in the process of being humble, they acknowledge that when someone acknowledges them. That's the right thing to do, part one. Part two is that I spent a lot of time, I mean, between 2000 and 2010, I used to read 2 books at all times. I would read, oh my goodness, one summer I read biographies of artists. I would read self-help books. I mean, I recommend, if you haven't already done so, you need to go look for the movie The Secret, the 2006 version. You need to read The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, who's considered to be the leading authority on creativity in the country. She's Martin Scorsese's ex-wife. The Artist Way is a 12-step program for artists, kind of like Alcoholics, it's for artists. I'm a painter, a really good one, but I was blocked for 13 years and couldn't figure out why. You know why? Because I'm an artist and I only really want to make good art. And her thing was, no, don't get stuck on that. Just make something. Don't worry about what size or what colors or whether it goes with the furniture or how you're going to frame it. Just make something, because you have to make bad art to make good art. Then her friend, Penny Pierce, wrote another extraordinary book called The Intuitive Way. Everybody has intuition. It's a human phenomenon, but artists use it the most. Women are pretty good at it too. Any book you read on the subject of intuition, they will first tell you that intuition is the voice of God, and they're never talking about religion. They're only talking about reality. You hear voices in your head, and you know for real, one of those voices isn't you. You know it. Sometimes you argue with it. Example, you're looking for a parking space and the voice will say, go around the corner and you'll see a parking space. Like, no, here's one right here. And if you don't listen and you park right here, you go around the corner, there's a parking space right in front of the door. She teaches you how to listen. There's a lot of stuff that comes through you that you ignore. You're missing a lot of your messages. And again, I was like, no, I'm trying to get with God. I don't want to know how to listen, because seriously, I'm tired of struggling. I want to know, how do people make it? Evidently, it's possible. I want to know, how do I make it? And part of it was learning what I'm experiencing and learning how to articulate it with words. I'm real good at it now.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here as I see we're kind of getting low on time. We've got a couple of things that came into the chat. Carolyn left a comment just before she left, said, thank you very much, Vinnie. I have to leave the session. Your reparations practice is very inspiring. Represent, represent. And then Jennifer asked a question. One obstacle for emerging public artists is having the resources, especially money, but also skills and practice to get started on the scale that is necessary. Any ideas for the way that arts administrators can help artists take that first step?
Okay, so let me preface by saying, in case you all didn't pick it up, I'm untutored. I didn't go to art school at all. I didn't take any classes. I'm not interested in workshop. I just want to make stuff. Again, it helps that I came with gifts. I mean, I argued with my first grade teacher about writing style. I already knew how to write. I already knew how to read. I want to do script. You know, I have my own mind. And again, I don't care what anybody else is making. I never really cared about going to exhibitions or galleries or museums or anything like that. I just want to make what I want to make. So I think it begins with having a passion for making stuff yourself. That's the beginning of it. Like, what do you want to make? And why does what you want to make matter? The next question is, okay, so now you're making stuff. Who's your audience? Is it just for you? I mean, some people only make stuff for themselves. Like, yeah, okay, that's possible. But it didn't take me long to realize, particularly when I started making sculpture, because that was a surprise at 36. I'm like, oh, wait, God must have changed his mind. It made me feel responsible. I'm like, the gift can't be for nothing. I assume God was bored. Like, you are not doing what I want you to do with the painting. Okay, fine, forget that. Let's do this. No ramp up time, ta-da. You know, I got Ella Fitzgerald in the first year of sculpting. It's Ella Fitzgerald. She was still alive when I got her. And again, the question is being relentless with, I'm not taking no for an answer. There's a way to do this. You know, the question is, what are you trying to do? And the question is, are you humble enough to ask somebody to help you? So for instance, it's not uncommon for me to call my senator, my mayor, my NAACP, I call whoever I think can help me with something. And then I tell them what I want and ask them, what do they think? And then I listen. So again, the question is, what do you want? It begins with what matters to you first. Can you be honest with yourself? Even if you're just trying to pay the rent, okay, that's real. Okay, but in the process, what does the work do? How does that serve anybody else besides you? And then ultimately, it's about trying to figure out where's the money. There's money all over the place. There is so much money all over the place. Do not believe that there's not money in the world. There's plenty of money. The question is, what do you want money for? Like for instance, the Rain Garden Project. When I first went to the city, I was like, I need $100,000. They were like, really? I said, I'll find half if you give me half. This is me negotiating. I'll find half, you give me half. They said, okay, let us know when you find your half. I already found my half. I waited 2 weeks. I went back, I got my half. Where's your 50? They were like, oh, we got it. Okay. So, you know, I'm like, this is what I'm going to do. And again, I wanted to make 5 sculptures. I wanted to be museum quality. I want to do bronze. Okay. I'm going to have an exhibition. It's going to travel. All right, then, okay, let's see. I'm going to engage the community. I'm going to do workshops with kids. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And they're like, yeah, this is all good because it's going to make them look good. Because again, they knew me already as a public relations specialist. Hi, that was my day job. They knew me as a newspaper columnist. That was a day job. It was helpful that they knew me. They didn't ask me for no illustrations and nothing. They just gave me the money. People like, that's unprecedented. So that's how it happens for me. And again, you can't get stuck on what people tell you. Hell, my mother told me I couldn't make any money until I was dead. That's why I couldn't major in art when I was trying to figure out what to go to college for. You don't have a degree in psychology, human behavior. What makes people do what they do? And then you take that information and you try to figure out how to make it work for yourself. Art in public places is a sales job. Art, if you're a working artist, it's a sales job. Question is, how are you going to market yourself? Hi, when Facebook came out, I'm like, oh, this is like, I could do the Vinnie Bagwell show for free. I seriously hope they don't ever start charging for Facebook, because I'm telling you, I maxed that out. I didn't have time for Twitter. When I looked at Twitter, I'm like, I don't really like Twitter because Twitter is just visuals. I want to be able to tell people what I think and what I mean. So I stayed with Facebook. And then here comes Instagram. It's like, I'm not really through with that either. I've got friends who swear by Twitter and Instagram. I'm like, yeah, but that's what works for you. It could work for me, but I don't have time for that because I'm busy over here. Seriously, I am, if you look at my resume, I'm doing 4 to 5 commissions every year for the last 5 years. I'm banging it out. But again, in that process, hell, I got to go to the masseuse every week to get worked over because my body hurts. I walk around whining about I'm tired, you know? And again, you have to figure out how to balance yourself so that you can do it. And then my other thing is, I'm not going to do this for the rest of my life. I'm going to do pedal to the metal because I finally got a chance and I'm going to prove myself while I have a chance. And at some point, I expect to live long enough to relax and just be Miss Bagwell. That's what I'm thinking.
I think that's great advice. I think that's kind of what we all have to do as artists and administrators is, you know, you use your network and you use your skills and you figure out how to make those two things work together to get you where you want to go.
I say to the administrators, stop asking people to work for free. I have had to reprimand, no kidding. Last year I had to reprimand 3 commissioners, 3 of them. I became a finalist for all 3. You know, but I had to spank them first and be like, excuse me, let me understand what you want. You want us to create a maquette, but you don't want to give us any money? Let me tell you what that means to me. I'm in the middle of doing something for Boise, something for Norfolk, something for Irvington, and I got stuff coming down the pipe. So you want me to stop what I'm doing for a couple of weeks, because this should take a couple of weeks to do. Now I got to stop all that. I got to work for you for free, but my rent is still due. I still got to pay car insurance. I still got to pay a bunch of stuff, but I can't put in an invoice to any of those people that have already commissioned me because I'm working for you for free. That doesn't seem like it's right. And they were like, okay, we see what you mean. It's like, you don't have no money you want to give us? I tell you what, again, this is me negotiating. Why don't you relax your requirements? You don't have no money? Fine. Relax requirements. Let me decide how I want to respond. I tell you what, here's my qualifications. I am more than qualified. If you pick me as a finalist and you pay an honorarium, I'll make you something, but I don't work for free anymore. I don't have to. That's for the kids. People straight out of college trying to do something. But by the time you're a 50, 60-year-old, you can't afford to work for free. You got family, kids, bills, stuff. And again, they just take it for granted. Like, oh, I didn't think about that. No, obviously you did not. Mind you, I'm on a Zoom meeting like this. All of a sudden, all pandemonium breaks loose. The whole Zoom meeting, they lose control for about 10 minutes. Because everybody's like, yeah, what she said. I'm like, how come you all didn't say nothing? How can you make me be the fall guy? How come I got to say something? Now it's thank you, Miss Bagwell. By the way, the last one, I didn't win. Somebody else won it. But she did have the courtesy to say to me, thank you for getting me $2,000. I paid for my airfare and hotel and a few things. I'm like, oh, you're welcome. You know, that's a big thing. State governments are notorious. Hi, I just won Harriet Tubman. So funny, briefly. I had made a sculpture for Newark. Newark paid a decent honorarium. I took my honorarium and I paid my architect. I have two of them. Paid my architect because I was like, okay, here's what I want, but I need you to do it like in CAD or whatever. So it looks like I'm a professional. That's what I need. Okay. So she's like, okay, fine. And she doesn't whack me. But the point of it is that Newark said no. But on the same day that Newark said no, here comes Niagara Falls talking about, would you mind applying for our call? I'm like, what's the call? Harriet told me, I'm like, yeah, I'll apply for your call, no problem. By the way, I just won Student Truth, New York State last year. I know the rigor. They send you an application that is 127 pages long. And you got to wade through it. And they only give you 10 days, 10 days. So that's 10 days to read all their stuff, 10 days to come up with a good idea, 10 days to come up with a maquette, and nobody giving up no money. The first time I saw it, I started spitting expletives like, dang, these people. But I'm like, no, that's mine. You know what? I had to stop everything I was doing for a week to make a maquette of Sojourner Truth. Yes, I won. Okay, luckily this time I already had a maquette, already had a concept, just had to reconfigure it for a site-specific installation. It's like, okay, it still took me 5 whole days, 6 trips to daggone FedEx, okay, because I believe in crossing T's and dotting I's. So I didn't do spell check today. But my point is, you know, I'm trying to win. I intend to win. So of course, you see this personality, it takes me far. So the woman calls me up, she want to talk. I said, okay, so we're not colluding, right? She said, oh, no, I'm not even a selection committee. I said, no, but we're not colluding, right? No. I said, so I'm curious. How many people did you invite besides me? She said, 10. I said, how many of the 10 said yes? She said, only you and one other person. I said, what did the naysayers say? It's too hard, it's too long, they want a maquette, there's no money. I'm like, that's okay. I said, tell you what, leave it just the way it is, because I'm winning. I'm gonna win this, you'll see. And so she started laughing. I said, don't laugh, I'm serious, okay? Because I stay ready so I don't have to get ready. This is it. And the thing of it is I call it drop, tuck, roll. Okay, first of all, learn how to read and understand what you're reading. If they give you instructions, underline, highlight, whatever you got to do so your eyes can get it and your brain can get it. And now systematically go through the requisites. 1, okay, 2, okay, 3, 4, check. Then, by all means, just to make sure you're sane, if you're lucky and you have any critical thinking friends, ask somebody to listen to you. Do I sound like I'm okay? Do I sound like I'm making sense? Do you get what I'm saying? Look at this. I have several people, God bless them, that allow me to send them stuff like, read this. Or sometimes it's, can you listen? My cousin Craig, he'd be like, I don't know about that. I mean, what about, you know, and he'll tell me how to fix it. My girlfriend from college is my publicist. She's brutal. I send her stuff at the last minute. She gets mad, like, why? I said, because by the time I finish tweaking 27 times, no kidding, I don't want to make you go through that process with me. I just want to send you what I'm finally satisfied with. And sometimes it's the day before. I'm sorry. Can you please hurry up? I want to send this in the morning. And she's good because she'll come back like, this right here, take that out, put this in, take that out, put this in. This is good. And then she'll talk to me about why it's winning. And again, this is you pick your friends better. You just don't want people to tell you you're a genius. That's not enough. You need people who will sit there and seriously whip you into shape. Brutally sometimes. I mean, one time I said to Michelle, you hurt my feelings, making me cry. Oh, honey, I'm sorry. It's like, no. It's just, you could be kinder, Jesus, you know? But again, she makes me better. I appreciate y'all's time and listening to me today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's do last call. Any last question? Anyone want to jump in? Okay, I don't see anyone unmuting.
You can put my phone number or my email in the chat. You know, people can feel free to call me at their leisure. I take strange phone calls from everybody, you know, because at this point, it doesn't hurt me to help. It really does not, because my attitude is if you can beat me, good, because you have to get really early in the morning to beat me.
Do you have an email address?
Vinnie Bagwell, VINNIE, Bagwell, BAGWELL, all one thing, at yahoo.com.
Thank you. I love your necklace, by the way.
Thank you. Echo of the Dreamer. Margaret Thurman, God bless her heart. Many years ago, when email and Google was new, I Googled her and I wrote her this lovely love letter about how her jewelry makes me feel so powerful and how it's really hard for me to go out the house with nice jewelry and that I just love her and la 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 la. And by the way, I'm an artist and here's my stuff. And she in turn invited me to her wholesale sale and I've been buying her stuff wholesale ever since. Stuff is expensive. And as a matter of fact, it's funny because I saw something over the summer and I said to her, look at this. She said, oh, don't you dare buy that. I'll make it for you. I'm like, oh, okay. And she gave it to me really at a fraction of the price. I'm like, Margaret, I just love you so much. Really. She is phenomenal. Echo of the Dreamer.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I think that wraps us up. I just put email and phone number in the chat, so you all can get that. Save the chat for the meeting if you want
Do
it.
you guys ever create commissions?
Like, do we put out? Yes, we do. I'm gonna put you on our
list. I don't think I've ever seen Oklahoma.
Yeah, I'll put you on the list because yeah, we do some and we pay honorariums. So
nice, impressive.
Yeah,
impressive. Okay,
yes.
thank you. I appreciate you all's time. Thank you for coming. It's nice to see a good turnout. And you know, as I said, you guys, if you care, you can always, you know, look and see what I'm doing on Facebook. It's not autobiographical, but you can always find out like what is she doing, what is she thinking about now. You know, I like to show people process because a lot of people don't get to see process. So for instance, you know, I'm getting ready to do Harriet Tubman. It's like, look at that armature. It's like, oh my God, that's a work of art by itself. And again, people get to understand how you create public art so that when you finally do it, they value it more. I think that's one of the important things that I've discovered in the process is that when you bring people into the process and they realize that it's not a really easy or brief process, they value it so much more. I mean, my Ella Fitzgerald for years at Christmas time and Valentine's Day, people put flowers in her hand and they, you know, put scarves on her. And, you know, I mean, they used to call my mother when the lights go out. I mean, you know, people cared about that artwork. And so that's kind of how you want to feel about, you know, you want people to feel about your art. You want them to value it. So, you know, when you bring them into the process, that helps people to relate to you and it helps them to relate to the work. And if it really resonates, you know, it's impactful. So I hope to get to do something for you sometime.
Yeah, well, it was so great to learn more about your practice and I do appreciate it. And I will be putting you on our list so that you'll be getting our calls.
Thank you. You all have a good week and enjoy that mild winter. I'm jealous.
All right, well, stay warm. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Vinnie.
So long.